Okay, in this video I'm going to go ahead and talk about how to process XML and JSON data using NiFi, and we'll be using just some of the standard processors that come. The setup's pretty easy. Basically, you go to the website that I put together and you download two files. One of them is a template file that contains the flow file I created for you to use, and the other one is this XSLT file that you use to transform the XML data that we start with into JSON data. So basically, steps are, again, you download the template, parse XML demo, and you download the TestXLT file. Go to this website to go ahead. They'll be right there for you. Just click on the link and download them. You want to make sure that you've downloaded and installed NiFi, have that all set up. Once you do, it's important you copy the test.xslt file to that local NiFi directory. So typically, if you're running NiFi 11.4, it'll be in this directory here. So just copy it to that directory. After you've copied that test.xlt, go ahead and start up NiFi. Again, it'd be something similar like this. It'd be in the bin directory. Whether you're running it in a Linux or Windows environment, depends on how you're going to start it. And then you open up the browser to your local host. Out of the box, it'll be port 8080 NiFi. After you do that, you want to go into the NiFi graph after you've gone to port 8080, and you want to import that parse XML demo template into NiFi, and then you simply add the template to the graph, start all the processors, and how it works is there's it'll go ahead, and the way the flow file is set up is it goes out to the USGS Geological Service and downloads the last 24 hours of earthquake data in an XML file. You'll see this in the flow file how it works, but basically it's an XML file you get, maybe about, I don't know, 1 or 2 or 300 of the last earthquakes in the last 24 hours. It's in an XML file, and what the flow will do is it'll actually split up each earthquake event into a single XML file or a single JSON file. So I have a little video set up. We'll go ahead and see how that works, and I'll step you through on how to actually do it in the NiFi graph. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do this through the website. So you're going to go to the Silver Cloud Computing website, and then you want to go ahead and go to the NiFi tips area. And what we're going to go ahead and do is scroll down, and we're going to download these two files. So this gives you a little description of what's involved and what you have to do, and it also shows you what primary interest of NiFi processors we'll be using here. So I'll show you how to work those. The first thing I do is download the parse XML JSON demo. So we're going to download it, and we're just going to go ahead and give it the name parse XML JSON demo, and it's an XML file. So that's going to be our template. We're going to upload that later after we start NiFi. Go ahead and save it. And then we're going to go ahead and download our transform XML test.xslt. We're going to again name it test.xslt. And this is the file that's going to actually transform our XML data into JSON data. Go ahead and save that. And let's go ahead and just go to the download folders where we downloaded it. So there's our two files, and there's our NiFi. So let me go ahead and install my NiFi just out of the box. We're going to go ahead and unpack that. Just give it a minute here. And again, it probably ahead of time, it helps if you had NiFi installed already, so it makes things go a little faster. But I'm not changing any NiFi settings. It's just strictly out of the box. So let's go ahead and get that set up. And the only thing you have to do here is to make sure you copy that test.xslt over into the NiFi base directory. So here's our NiFi. It's unpacked. I'm running 1.11.4, so I'm going to go ahead and copy that XSLT file to this directory right here. That's the really only important thing you got to do before you start it. We're going to go ahead and go to our bin directory. I'm running on a Windows box, so we're going to go run it in a Windows environment. So we're going to go ahead to our bin directory to start our NiFi. And with the Windows, I think you want to run NiFi .bat or something like that. So go ahead and run that. It's going to take a little while to start up. I don't have the fastest machine here, but let's just give it a minute or two. Again, this is strictly out of the box. I just downloaded NiFi, didn't change anything. It's going to open up unsecure on port 8080. So let's see if that's opened up yet. We're going to do localhost 8080 NiFi. It's still coming up. Give it a minute here. Hang on. Let's try it again. Come on. All right, here it is. Okay. Okay, so our NiFi is up. Let me just refresh it really fast here. Okay, so here's our NiFi. And the first thing we're going to do is upload that template. So we're going to go ahead and select template. We're going to upload it. And again, we called it parse XML JSON demo. So we're going to go ahead and upload it. Successfully uploaded. And then if you want to verify that's uploaded, go in the upper right. Click on templates, and then you should see it over there. Okay, it just verifies that you actually did upload it. And then just a matter of putting the template in Canvas. Just go to the templates icon, drag and drop it down there. Select the template you want to load. There's only one there. Click Add, and then boom, all of a sudden, there you go. You got the template I put together to help you demo this technology. Let's go ahead and hit the Start button to play. We're going to start everything right off the bat. Just run some data through. And what it's going to do is go to the USGS website, download the earthquake data, and then separate it out into XML and JSON and parse it. So let me go ahead and back it off here. Let's zoom in a little bit here. Okay. So I think there's about 300 or so earthquake events. 312 maybe. And basically it's set up to acquire the data here, and then it'll go ahead and parse XML. All the XML parsing is done over here in this processing group, and all the JSON processing is done in the parse JSON. I just decided it'd be easier to break it up that way, and then all the errors, if any happen, will go in the center box there. And okay, so we got 311, 312. I think we got one extra one on the right there for the parse JSON. I can't remember which one that was, but I think it's just the base one. But let's go ahead and empty the contents, each of those queues. So it actually worked. We got data, we processed it, looks like everything works. So let's just go over each block and see how this works. So let's clear out all the data, refresh it, and let's just verify. You got 0 up here, so there's nothing in the, no queues, no data weight in the queues. And let's just step through how all this works. So the first thing we do is we're going to go ahead and stop some of the processors so I can step through what each of them does. This one actually acquires the data from the USGS website. If you actually go to this website, you can actually get an XML file that will have the last 24 hours of earthquake data. Also, so we don't hit it all the time, I put it in like a really long schedule, like 9,000 seconds. So it'll only run once every 25 days or something like that, because we only want to just ping it once. So let's go ahead and start it and stop it just to go ahead and get some data. Okay, so we got some data. Let's go ahead and stop. Let's go ahead and disable it. And now we have our one file we got from the USGS website. Well, let's stop some of these other guys, and now we're going to go ahead and process this data here. Now what this does is it just extracts some information from the actual XML document, some time stuff, how many earthquake events there are, and some other things like that. So if you actually look at the raw data that we just downloaded, you'll see it's an XML file. You go to View. Give it a second here. It's a big file. And these are all the earthquake events. This is what we're going to start processing in parse. If you go to the very, very bottom, you'll see something there that tells you when it was created time-wise. Let's see. And I actually parse that information out here in this little processing block. And I also get the counts, number of earthquake events. So these are stored, that's stored as an attribute. So that's what the raw data looks like. Let's go ahead and start that. And all I'm doing is extracting information out of that XML document. So let's look at the XML stuff first, and we'll look at the transform JSON stuff second. Let me stop some blocks over here so we can step through again what each of these blocks does instead of just watching it go through. So let's stop that. Okay, so we're going to send that file through to our XML processing group, parse XML processing group. Let's go in here. Okay, so we got the one file in, and what this is going to do now, if you look at the configuration, it's actually going to split up each earthquake event into separate flow files. So there's the logic to separate either XML query to separate earthquake event, and then it actually puts it into a flow file. So we're going to have, from one flow file, we're going to have many flow files. Each flow file is going to contain one earthquake event. So let's go ahead and run that. We have one in the queue, and we should have 300 something coming out here. Let's see. So about 311 or so. Okay. So what this did was it separated out each event into single flow files. So if you want to look at the data, let's see. There we go. This queue. See each of those now? Each of those represent one earthquake event. Oh, if you want to look at the attributes I set before with the count and everything like that in the previous processing group, you can see that it was set here. And if you want to view the data, there's just one line, one XML line that contains the earthquake event for one earthquake event. There's a lot of information there: magnitude, location, latitude, longitude, where it happened, how deep it was, blah blah blah. Just a bunch of information there. And there's only certain information I'm going to extract out of this data. I mean, you can look at it, and there's just a ton of stuff there. But let me just show you the information that I'm going to extract next. Let's see if I can put it into a Word document here. Okay, so here I'm getting the latitude and longitude, probably time it happened, and the magnitude. So those, of all the data, those are the only things I'm really going to care about and extract. So I'm going to extract the information out of this XML document. So let's go ahead and go to the next processing block, which actually gets the data. So here you can see how you extract information from each of those events. So city, date, longitude, latitude, magnitude, time, all the other stuff. That's information that's extracted and stored as an attribute. Look at the very top, it's this flow file attribute. So it's stored as an attribute. The payload isn't modified at all. So let's go ahead and run that. So again, we got the XML document. We split it up into separate events, or separate earthquake events, and then we process each event, earthquake event separately for the earthquake information. And if you see here, there it is. And we look at our attributes. Let's see, we see some stuff here. Let me scroll down a little bit. Yeah, so you look at the city. The stuff I extracted, lat long. Okay, so that's the stuff we extracted from the XML file. And you can make determinations based on if the magnitude was greater than 5, you could do logic to say if it's greater than 5, do this. If it's greater than 7, send an email or whatever you want. But you can actually route on that. All right, let's look over the JSON stuff now. And the key for the JSON stuff to work is this thing called transform XML, and that uses our test.xslt file that transforms the data from XML document into a JSON document. That's the key to making this work. So now we have JSON data right here. It was XML, now we're talking JSON data, because that transform XML did it for us. And so like before, what we're going to do is split the data into individual events, JSON events. So these are all JSON files now. So if you look at the data, it's not XML data anymore, it's JSON data. Again, these are individual earthquake events, all in JSON format now. As opposed to before, it was XML. And the JSONs are a little bit bigger, so you can see there's a lot more stuff here. It's more descriptive, a little bit more overhead, but it's the same information. You know, magnitude, lat long, all that other stuff. So I think instead of this time, what I'll do is I'll modify the actual data. So what I'm going to do here is change some of the attributes, the JSON keys inside the payload to maybe give something a little easier to work with. So we're going to use this thing called the jolt transform. And again, you just have to look at it and play with it. Let me just run it through. I think the easiest thing is to run it through and then just show you the output, what that jolt transform does if you ever want to use it or something like that. You can certainly parse things on JSON like we did before for XML, but I just wanted to show you how you can modify the JSON contents if you wanted to. So here's the payload now. It kind of looks the same, but because of that JILT transform, I made a couple of changes as far as how the longitude is saved in there, or how the magnitude is saved. Let me show you before and after demo. Here's what it looked like before and after. Hang on. Let's see. And again, all I did was modify the actual payload. I didn't add any attributes this time. Come on. All right, here we go. Let's see if I can show you. There we go. So the old way, that's what the magnitude looked like, and the new way, I just cut out all that overhead and just gave a key value pair. So I gave the key and the value. And that's what that JILT transform does. So you can kind of modify the payload if you want. And let's see, I think again. Alright, so again, it's real easy. You just go ahead and download and install NiFi. Okay, you know how to do that already. Download the template and the transform files. Start NiFi and upload the template. And don't forget to copy that transform file, that XSLT file, over to your NiFi directory before you start it up. Add the template to the graph and then start the processors. I'm not going to go into too much depth what XML or JSON is or any other stuff. Basically, I just put a graph together to help you get a feel of how you can use NiFi to process this kind of data and extract stuff from it. So the best thing to do is just look at the graph, look at some of the settings I have as far as how to extract information from an XML file or a JSON file, and it'll give you a good feel of how you can actually use it to do things as far as using NiFi. And if you have any questions, you visit the website. I'll try and put more stuff up there as I add things. I'll put it in the NiFi.html directory. And of course, you can always send emails to me if you have any questions or comments or want to see any other videos.